So, as we mentioned, there is quite a bit of ground we need to cover between now and the end of the month. At that point, we'll be looking straight away into exam week and the end of the semester. The study guide that we sent you as the holiday weekend was approaching, 10 pages of detail there are basically a compilation. It's a condensed version of topics and walkthroughs that we have conducted for the last 4 weeks. And much of that material is taken from chapters 2, 3, 8, and 10, and other related online references. The student learning objectives that you see under the operational tenet heading are student learning objectives that are not specifically referenced in your textbook, but these are elements of subject matter expertise from people who work out in industry. And so basically what I wanted to do was to walk through some of the most important points of this, but it's really critical that you start reading each of the headings. So each of the student learning objectives, correspond with the headings. And what we want you to do is to read through it, see if it makes sense. And if there's anything that doesn't make sense, you need to shoot me a quick email. This Thursday, I will post the assessment for this module. And by the start of class on Thursday, we've got a series of assignments, related assignments that we've posted in Blackboard. So if you look in here under module 2, and yeah, I'll update this to show the same student learning objectives that we had in the study guide. Essentially, I had an assignment 2.1, which offered some optional credit for downloading the Windows Admin Center. Some of you submitted, some of you didn't. So what we're seeing is that some of you have completed the solution and some of you haven't. And by 2 p.m. this Thursday, you need to have the solution finished. Because if you don't have the solution finished, there are other things we're going to do in our solutions for module 3 and 4 by the end of the month that you would not be capable of performing unless you set up Windows Admin Center on a virtual machine. These other assignments, I don't want you to panic, but we demonstrated the Microsoft Download Center, how you can look up a specific download and how you can use those to slipstream using DISM, right? So what we want you to do is to basically walk through the same set of steps that you see outlined in the study guide. Each of these assignments are basically a mirror image of the tasks that I demonstrated with you in sessions. Here, assignment 2.3, install or recovery media creation. So you can either create installation media or recovery media with a USB. You take your pick, which one you want. I want you to notice when they're all due. 2 p.m. Thursday, 2 p.m. Thursday, 2 p.m. Thursday, 2 p.m. Thursday, right? If you've already completed this one, that's great. So you've already got that. After you've given Slipstream a try for yourself, earlier when we demonstrated this, we basically told you that there was going to be an assignment posted where you could take a screenshot of the finished result, and we showed you how to use a VHD so you could set up install media with Yumi. Everybody remember Yumi?
Yeah.
Okay, so I showed you how to create a VHD that was 8 gigs large or 4 gigs large or however large you need. You don't have to purchase a USB, but you can purchase a USB or use one that you already have to create recovery media, which is basically going to work the same way. It takes a little longer by using the option off of the system recovery. So this is something we already demonstrated, but what I'll do is walk through that process again, capture a short video and post it online. So what you're going to see today with the MSU download and slipstream, I'm going to cut out that small video and post it inside the resources folder in an assignments. You'll see a folder inside resources called assignments, assignment tasks, right? So inside the resources folder, you have solution tasks. I'll add one called assignment tasks. And now that I have better internet access, I'll also be posting the rest of the session recordings with some descriptive headers. So you'll be able to reference those sessions where we cover those things in the class, but I'll also have a separate folder for assignment tasks. Are there any questions about what's expected for submissions between now and 2 p.m.?
No.
Okay, so you should have done this already and noodled around with this. This is not a big deal. The steps that we need to follow are in your study guide, and we've demonstrated, parts of this before. I just want to walk through it on your own virtual machine. And then this one is particularly interesting. So I want you to see the number of points. So if you run sysprep, one of the things that, well, I want to take a little bit of time to call out. You'll see this reference to images. Install images that have to do with the setup of the operating system, but then there are whole system images that you would use if you're rapidly duplicating, if you're using like a photocopy machine to create copies of a system after it's been set up, after the applications have been added, after the updates have posted. That mixed use of the term images can be a little problematic. And the more I saw the references online for procedures for automating and automating installations, I saw that there were really just two sides of the house. The one that had to do with the raw source code for just the installation of the operating system. And that's, that would concern the slipstream stuff. So when we're doing a slipstream task, we're taking the install media for Windows 10, the ISO, or the install media for Server 2019, and we're injecting the updates inside that install media. But when we use that media, the only thing we have when we're finished is a newly installed operating system on a screen. We don't have any applications set up. We didn't run any updates. We haven't configured anything. We don't have graphical management tools set up or configured for it. There's all these extra things that you go through to efficiently deploy and support systems when you roll them out. And what we want to do is to show you what happens after you've gone through the process of taking a setup further. You create what you believe to be the ideal system for people at your workplace. So in larger organizations, and a great example of this is the Department of Transportation for the Virgin Islands, right? I want us all to imagine that we work for the Department of Transportation for the Virgin Islands. And all of us have the same basic screen. We go to training sessions. We have the same set of database applications to help our, the residents of the Virgin Islands with, a variety of needs that the Department of Transportation renders, right? They provide services to everybody. And if it doesn't have to do with driver licenses, then it has to do with car inspections. and car registrations and transfer of property, right? So the Department of Transportation basically has a set of custom applications that they all use and they all reference. My point is that when people are automating the deployment and support of operating systems, much of the time they're doing a whole lot more than just setting up the OS, right? So you have images that you can customize to expedite setting up a bare operating system. But more importantly, when you get everything ideally configured, and let's say you have a new job, you're working technical support issues for the Department of Transportation. They want you to create a brand new system for everyone to use on their desktop screens. And so you start from scratch and you build out all of these custom applications and you get it to the point where it's ready and your supervisor says, let me take it out for a test drive. And after the test drive, your supervisor has a checklist. Is my car registration software on the desktop? Yes, it's on the desktop. Is my licensing application for driver's licenses on the desktop? Yes, it's on the desktop. And so your supervisor goes through all of these checklists, and then basically what they do is they reach a point where they say, okay, this is ready for distribution. The short term for the word distribution is distro, and in the Linux world, basically Linux distributions are ISOs, they're images that include not only the operating system, but a whole suite of custom applications depending on the interest. How many of you have heard of Kali?
Yep.
So Kali is a great example of a distribution where, hey, it's not just the operating system, it's all the custom applications, it's configured in a special way. All of those things were done painstakingly. And then they basically get to the place a couple of times a year where they review the checklists of, hey, did we fix all the bugs in Wireshark? Did we get all of the hashing tools straight? There were some difficulties with the malware analysis tools in SleuthKit. So all these extra things that they bundle, all these extra tools they build into Kali, so it just works. The whole thing is loaded and it's like, oh my gosh, this is the same thing that the professionals use. They work the same process to prep that image. So we have two levels of prep for install images, just the OS and what we call whole system images. And I really wanted to take some quality time today to just call that out and explain that, for clarity's sake, we really need to, and I'm really disappointed in many of the, even the published textbooks and references for the industry. You do a very poor job of explaining when you're automating and deploying and supporting large numbers of machines, how do you do that efficiently? And they don't really help people understand the difference between the two levels of activity and preparation. So this one is just to install a bare operating system and nothing else. That's called source media or install media image. And the whole system image is after you're doing everything else. Sysprep, I really wanted you to see sysprep and what it does when you have a system. And at this point, I think for some of the things we've done with your virtual machines, everybody's run updates on their virtual machines, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's see. So yeah, there's in the section E, best practices to automate system assessment, deployment, and support. One thing you do before you deploy a new system is you check the hardware to make sure, is the hardware going to be able to support the new version of operating system? Are the current applications going to work? I have a certain version of Office that I'm running. I put the new latest version of Windows in there. is my software going to work? Sometimes your software doesn't. And we didn't spend a lot of time yet, but in section E, I described some basic tools, deployment kit, and the ADK. It's called the ADK. You can run this tool on every system, and it'll give you an inventory of who's ready and who isn't. And that's worth mention. We've already talked about security account management and how working these methods is dramatically different when you're talking about a work group versus a domain. When you have a domain, you can use System Center Configuration Manager. You can basically take an image, a system image, and push it out with WDS and with System Center. If you're doing a work group security account management, if you're doing a local work group and you have Windows Home Edition, you do not have the ability to use automated systems, not so much. So a lot of the things that you would normally be able to use, like automated updates with WSUS or Windows Deployment Service, some of those limitations hit. It's better to have an enterprise domain to do that. We break out the command line and graphical tools and how they're used and what they're done for. And then these last three are basically application-based learning objectives. It's the kinds of things you do for your assignments and your solution. So, I'm going to ask you to recall specifics about something you did hands-on for an assignment or hands-on for your solution. When you take the assessment, if there's something that you were supposed to know to perform or complete an assignment or the solution, that's what these last three learning objectives are all about. Finally, recounting the ordered steps required to resolve the most common causes of tool error. I've demonstrated a number of these live, but that last section is, okay, you have all these fancy methods to make things easy to deploy and support large numbers of systems. What happens when they just don't work? So in section K, in the last section, you'll see here, it talks about what you can do to resolve, starting with the basics, right? Sometimes we didn't run as administrator. Sometimes there's no record in the hosts file or in DNS between the network address and the name of the machine. It's got to be registered as a trusted machine. And we talk about how you need to clear the DNS cache. Sometimes you make a change, you set up the host file, you try it out, you still can't ping, you still can't run, you have to flush the DNS. These are things that should not be foreign to you at this point. And we talked about firewall rules. You saw error messages that talked about RM disk management. That's remote management for disk configuration, remote management for firewall rules, right? So you have RM firewall rules, RM device management. We talk about identifying and eliminating critical dependencies. Sometimes something just won't work until a previous critical operating system update is loaded before you can load a later one. What am I saying? Oh, you want to load the feature update, which is a whole new version of the operating system using Windows Update. That is the only exception to the never upgrade in place rule. We told you previously, just don't do it. Don't upgrade in place. There is one exception that the textbook author called out and said, yeah, no, this is actually a good way to upgrade your operating system if you want to use Windows Update for a feature update. And the more I read up on it, I realized, okay, there are some critical dependencies. If you're going to use Windows Update to deliver a new operating system for someone, then they had to have had a certain They had to have had a clean install recently. They had to have had automated updates. Any of the users that were set up for that system could not be configured with administrative privileges. That's earlier in the study guide, right? So that's something that's mentioned earlier in the study guide about the one exception to never upgrade in place. There is only one case where an operating system feature update, a whole new version of the operating system can be loaded in place without, clean slating everything. But a lot of times you have to load all the cumulative updates from the previous 4 months. And so if you're running Windows Software Update Services, WSUS, locally, that's 1,000 times faster. Those happen so quickly, it's really easy to do. But that's one of the things that has to happen. So you're trying to get the new feature update and you can't, even though that's the one exception to the never upgrade in place rule. Why isn't it working? Oh, there's a cumulative update from the previous 3 months that have to clear first. Slipstream tasks. This one drove me crazy. I got to take a moment and I'm going to be very transparent with you about this. I've been working system management tasks professionally for 20 years in the workplace, very large organizations, right? And you know that I'm a certified systems engineer with Microsoft, right? I used to do slipstreaming all the time. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to get a single update to slipstream properly with this image right here in my downloads folder, the one that you downloaded from Microsoft Downloads in the My Campus portal. Everybody has a copy of this still, yes?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. It turns out that Microsoft has 2 different licensing models. They've had this in place for a while, but I've always used the subscription software assurance model. They have this new concept that really wasn't very big until recently, until the last couple of years. It's called LTSC, long-term support channel, right? So the install media that we get from Microsoft on our Azure education site basically is this one type of license. What we're saying is that a lot of the incidental updates don't really apply. This is the same as Microsoft Windows 10 Education Edition, LTSC. When students had access to Education Edition, it was a corporate license, and Microsoft said, okay, there's long-term support for this, but a lot of the updates that you could get for Windows 10 Home Edition, for Windows 8, they used to have a multimedia edition of Windows, right? Windows 7 Multimedia Edition, Windows 7 Professional Edition. They had all these different editions of Windows. And so some of the updates were okay and would load on those, but not on the corporate model. The thing that we want you to know is that sometimes when you try to load an update to slipstream it, if it is an SAC, semi-annual channel support, it's a subscription-based or it's for other editions of Windows operating systems, those won't load properly in the ISO. You'll get errors all the time. It says wrong version. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still trying to find a good candidate for an update that we can slipstream. But when you perform your assignment in the assignment we've just posted, you're basically going to stop short when it comes to actually executing the slipstream command. So you're going to do all but one of the tasks. And when you get down to identifying the MSU file that you use to post inside the ISO, you're going to skip that step. But then you're going to go ahead and perform the rest of them. So you'll have a screen that shows all of the proper responses in order when you're applying that. One of the best ways to do that is to simply copy the steps that we're going to post in a text file for your reference. So when it comes to which steps you need to perform, just like we have here, there's a way to update the license key if you're running virtual machines inside Hyper-V on a data center edition. You don't have to have additional license keys for the standard versions of the operating system virtual machines inside the guest systems that are running inside. There's actually a listing that Microsoft says is okay to use, but you have to install the key to make it work properly. So that's something that we're going to demonstrate in just a minute. I need to pause the recording and pause my screen for just a minute. And then I'm going to go ahead and come back and we'll demonstrate the first assignment. The other assignment for SysPrep, I'm going to demonstrate separately in a 15-minute video, and I'll post that online later today. And I'm sure it'll be easy for you to follow along with, but it's pretty spectacular when you run SysPrep. And if you're doing a whole system image as a distribution, the first time you see what happens with SysPrep, it's pretty phenomenal. Any questions about what we've covered so far in our study guide?
None so far.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to pause recording